He's a businessman, real estate developer, and he's known to blame a thing or two on President Obama. He's back hosting NBC's Celebrity Apprentice Sunday, January 4th on NBC, and I welcome the one, the only, and I consider him a friend, Donald Trump, to the podcast We the People. Donald, how are you?
Great to be with you, Jesse. It's been a long time since we had dinner in New York.
Yes, and since we played golf out in Lake Tahoe, I remember we were out there together also. And in fact, I quit flying, so how are we going to ever play golf together again?
Well, we better. Oh, you quit flying. You're not a believer, huh? You're not a believer in being 40,000 feet up in the air. That's terrible.
No, it isn't that. I have metal in my body, and I got tired of being treated like a criminal every time I went to an airport, and so they gave the option. They said, if you don't like it, don't fly. So I said, well, I don't like. I actually tried to bring a federal lawsuit for my Fourth Amendment rights, and it got thrown out of court. The judge said she didn't have jurisdiction. Imagine that, Donald. A federal judge who doesn't have jurisdiction over a federal question.
That's very interesting. You're right about that, Jesse.
Anyway, I had to ask my people, so Celebrity Apprentice, you're back. How long have you been doing that now?
So this is 10 years. It's the 14th episode. It's been copied. You know, we've had it on now a series of 14, and it's been copied 15 times by lots of different people, and they all tried to make it successful, and it's been a huge failure for every one of them, which, of course, makes me very happy, actually. But they've all failed miserably, and here we are, season 14, and it's going to be really terrific.
Donald, when you started doing it, did you have any idea that it would be 14 years of your life doing it?
Well, I actually was told it could never make it because, to make it on television, you really, and I've learned so much about ratings over the years, you have to have women watch. And a lot of the critics were saying, well, this can't make it because what woman would want to watch Donald Trump? And it was sort of like, I said, what, have I been so bad with women? I don't think so. And what happened is, it went on, Jesse. It opened at 10. It then went to 9, and then it went to 6. And then it went to number 1. Eventually it went down to number 1. It became the number 1 show on television. And I sort of wrote that critic a letter. I said, I guess the women are watching.
Well, and the other thing, too, Donald, you're a smart guy. No one's ever going to accuse you of not being intelligent. And I think you learned well from our dealings in the old days of pro wrestling at Trump there in Atlantic City, because we had the fastest sellouts ever, right?
We did. And, not so long ago, 5 years ago, I did the Battle of the Billionaires with your friend Vince. And that's the highest rated wrestling show ever. We did that one in Detroit. But, Jesse, that's the highest rated wrestling show ever. So we're very happy with that one. And I don't know how you feel about Vince. I mean, he's a friend of mine, but I'm not sure.
No, I'm fine with Vince. I mean, Vince and I had our disagreements, and I beat him in federal court, which irritated him. But other than that, we've gotten along great. In fact, we get along better today than we did when I worked for him.
That's great, Jesse. That's good. Well, he's always been really fair to me.
Well, the thing is, though, is what I love is, Donald, how you learn quick, like the world of pro wrestling. It doesn't matter.
Well, you have to learn quick, Jesse. If you don't learn quickly, you're in trouble in this world. This is a real vicious cycle, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, and you learn fast that any publicity is good as long as they spell your name right?
Well, there's a little truth to that. I'm not sure. I don't know if I'm a total believer, but there is a little bit of truth to that. There's no question about it.
That's the way we used to operate in wrestling. But let's get on to politics a little bit. You love to venture in there. Now, over the past 24 hours, you've criticized Obama for his climate deal with China, his Mexican deportation numbers, his relationship with Obamacare advisor. You're the master at getting the press to get anything to say about him. Do you really think Obama's worse than George Bush?
Well, I thought, I'm a Republican, but I thought George Bush was terrible. And I have this whole thing with Twitter where between Facebook and Twitter, I have almost 6 million people. So it's really like owning the New York Times without the losses. I love that. And I have a tremendous, it's a tremendous voice. And I talk about things. And look, Obama's a disaster. But, without Bush, you wouldn't have Obama. Obama was given to us by Bush because Bush did a lot of bad things. First of all, he destabilized the entire Middle East. I mean, that whole thing was a disaster. And as you remember, I said, look, if you're going to do it, at least keep the oil. Get something out of it. And now ISIS, as you know, Jesse, has the oil. So it was a real disaster. And honestly, both of them are disasters as far as I'm concerned.
What do we do then, Donald? It's, 2016's coming up. Do I need to run?
Well, you'd be one hell of an entertaining character. I've liked, a lot of people, they smile, but you have a lot of the things you say, Jesse, are common sense. They're just pure common sense, and they make sense to a lot of people, and don't underestimate it. And, I see that.
Well, I've gone public. I've told people, I said, if I got Donald Trump with me, Vince McMahon, and my friend Mark Cuban, those three guys could finance me to the point where I could make a hell of a run, and then you'd know who'd own me. It'd just be three people. How do you feel about my position on this, Donald? I think all presidential candidates should be required to wear NASCAR racing suits so that we as voters can be informed and know who owns them.
That's very interesting. Yesterday I gave a keynote because I own Doral in Miami, 800 acres in the middle of Miami. I gave a keynote speech for the NASCAR people. Brian France was there. The racers were all there. And it was at Doral, in the ballroom of Doral. And those guys have done a fantastic job. You talk about branding, but they have really done. It was an exciting evening. But that was just last night. But that's an interesting idea. That's one I have not heard of, Jess.
Well, I did that kind of tongue-in-cheek, thinking, well, geez, that would you'd be an informed voter then, because like in front of Barack Obama, you could have Goldman Sachs because they were his biggest contributor.
Jesse, you wouldn't have enough room in the uniform.
Yeah, but you just get the major ones, like Jimmy Johnson. His main contributor's Lowe's. You see the big Lowe's thing on Jimmy Johnson. So at least then you'd know. I know we're limited on time, Donald, so we'll move along here quickly.
Okay.
You recently said Mexico is the new China. What do you mean by that?
Well, within 2 years, Mexico is going to be, I hate to use the word partner, they'll be our largest trading partner, and they're doing numbers that are incredible, making a tremendous amount of money off the United States. And, when we had a soldier over there, we couldn't get the soldier out. They wouldn't even take our phone calls. And I actually don't think Obama even made a call, if you want to know the truth. I think he did not make a call. But Mexico is making a tremendous amount of money off the United States, Jesse, and we just allow that to happen. And look, we have no leader, we have no leadership, and what's going on is ridiculous. You know that. Probably you're somebody that knows it even better than I do. We have absolutely no leadership.
Well, it's sad. And again, let's get back. 2016, Donald, where do we go? Who would you support for president in 2016?
Well, it's a little early. It's going to start happening over the next period of time. We'll see what happens. And a lot of people are saying, are you going to run? Meaning, am I going to run? We're going to see what happens. We're going to look. And certainly, in a certain way, it's the most important election we've ever had because we are so far down. When you look at what's happening with China and all these other nations, the way they take advantage of this country, we are really in trouble. We're up to 18 trillion in debt now, Jesse, 18 trillion, a number that nobody thought, and it's going to 22. 22 trillion is a very big turning point, but it's going to 22 trillion. Obamacare has turned out to be a disaster, and it's really going to kill the economy. When Obamacare really kicks in, which is going to be in 16, the economy is going to be a travesty.
Let me ask you this, though, Donald, throwing Obamacare out of the mix, because I've made this statement. I've said that in a country as rich as the United States, or at least what we used to be, that every person in this country should have the right, if they're sick, to be able to go see a doctor. Do you agree with that?
I do. I think it's great. I think the concept is great. Obamacare is not the answer because, it's got so many flaws in it and it's very expensive. You can have a plan, Jesse, that's less expensive, but much, much better. So there are many, many concepts and many, many plans that would be much less expensive, both for people and for the country, and substantially better. So, hey, I'm all for that.
Don't you think, though, it's because of the sellout with the influx of the dirty money into the campaigns that they have to satisfy the people that pay the bills to get them there? Shouldn't that be the cleanup first?
Well, I can tell you this, Jesse, the insurance companies aren't complaining because their stocks are at an all-time high. So the insurance companies are big beneficiaries with Obamacare. And their stock right now is literally, their stocks are at all-time highs. So they're not complaining, and they put in plenty of cash into Obama's campaign.
Oh, yeah. See, that's what, to me, it all comes down to, Donald. I proudly can tell people, when I ran for governor of Minnesota, I only raised $300,000. I actually made more money doing the job than what I spent to get it. I
watched that race. If you remember, I was a small contributor to your race. But I watched that race, and I thought it was I thought it was one of the coolest races ever. So that's good, Jess. Proud of you.
Anyway, thank you, Donald. We got to move on because I know your time is valuable, but we always do a segment, and this is great for you. It's called If I Were President. Give me your rapid-fire responses to these questions, and don't take this too seriously, otherwise it's not fun. Okay? Here we go. 5 questions. Donald Trump's the new president 2016. What's your first executive order?
I'd knock out Obamacare.
First thing?
First thing. Or I'd override the executive order that's about to take place where they open up the borders. I mean, it's incredible. So I might do that. But I would knock out Obamacare. Obamacare is truly bad news.
I'd be different from you. My first executive order, I'd close Guantanamo and give it back to Cuba.
That's interesting. Okay. That's all right. That's interesting. It's a little bit different. Of course, Obama's been saying he's going to do that for a long period of time, right? Somehow that hasn't worked out.
They can't, though. That's the torture chamber.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Anyway, question number 2. Who's the first person you'd schedule a meeting with?
Well, I think I'd meet with numerous people, the top people on Wall Street, all of whom I know. And I'd pick the top of the list to get things going back with understanding that they're going to report to me. But I would meet the top people on Wall Street and come up with incentives to get this economy really going again, rising again.
Number 3, which comedian would you pick for your first White House Correspondents' Dinner?
Well, maybe Darrell Hammond, who imitates me incredibly well, or Frank Caliendo, who also imitates me well. Those two guys, they make a living off imitating me, and I find them actually very funny and both good guys.
Well, and you know, it's the height of flattery to have someone do that to you.
Well, it is. It really is. But they do a lot. Darrell Hammond, from Saturday Night Live, and Frank Caliendo, two good guys, and they spend a lot of time, like you get a lot of imitations, Jesse, so do I.
Question 4, Donald. What government agency would you abolish?
Well, you got a lot of them, but I'd certainly want to keep education on a more local level. Education, if you look where they're giving all sorts of orders down from Washington, I would say that education should be very much more localized than it is right now, Jesse.
You and I are on the complete same page there, Donald. That would be my choice, too. I would abolish the Federal Department of Education. Reason being, having been a governor, it can be totally handled at the state level, and the farther you send your money, the less you get back on it.
And handled much better and much really nicer for the kids. I think it's ridiculous. They send down orders from Washington. These people don't know what they're talking about. So I think if you were talking about something like that question, it's an interesting question, but what comes to mind would be education.
Okay, finally, the 5th one. What president would you model yourself after?
Well, I always liked Ronald Reagan. I knew him, I supported him, and I always liked him as a president, and he had mojo. He was something special, and we certainly don't have that right now.
You know what I like most about Ronald Reagan? Was he cut and ran.
Explain that.
I respected him because today he'd be accused of cutting and running. When we had the brave Marines in Lebanon and they were hit by that truck bomb and over 200 of them killed, did he go to war? Did he seek revenge? No. He got the hell out of there.
Well, we are a mess. That war that we're going through right now is a mess. And we have people that don't even understand it. We have a president that has no concept of what's going on. And honestly, as a nation, Jesse, we're in such trouble. It's incredible.
Yeah, and the guy that took us there didn't know what was going on, or he wouldn't have taken us there.
He didn't. I told you before, I'm a Republican, but Bush was a disaster. And the last thing we need is another Bush going in office.
If you had to pick between the two parties, Donald, throw yourself out, throw me out, throw everybody out, who do you think is going to come through the wash from the two parties in 2016? Who do you think it's going to be?
Well, I think you probably have Hillary, certainly. But, of course, we said that 4 years ago it was going to be Hillary, in a walk, and now you have it again. But probably it's Hillary. And on the other side, I don't know, Jesse. You have so many possible candidates, many of whom haven't even announced, and you certainly have a lot. Rand Paul is making headway. I guess you have Cruz and you have Christie, and, you have a lot of different people talking about running. But so far nobody's announced. We'll see what happens. But Hillary as a Democrat, I would say Hillary certainly seems to be like it's a lock. But, in the world of life and politics, Jesse, you never know.
Donald, would you run as an independent or would you join one of the two gangs?
No, I wouldn't run as an independent. I'd run as a Republican. I'm a Republican. I'd run as a Republican maybe, but I wouldn't run as an independent. The system doesn't set up as an independent. If I've studied the system very much, and there are some Jesse, there are some states you can't even get on the ballot as an independent. You'd have to spend a total fortune just to get on the ballot. And after you spent all that money, you probably wouldn't get on it. So it doesn't really, as a system, it doesn't set up as an independent.
But let me fire this at you for a moment, Donald, and we'll end with this, something for you to think about. If I ran, that would be the essence of my entire candidacy. I would challenge the American people to elect the first president since George Washington who does not belong to a party. And after watching 63% of the people not even turn out for the midterm elections, I think I could inspire them to come out and make history, challenge them to make history with me. I believe I could win on that issue alone.
But Jesse, I will tell you this, from a legal standpoint, because I've had lawyers study this very carefully, it is very hard in many states to even get on, which is unfair, frankly, but it's very hard to even get on the ballot in many states. Even if you have the money and the kind of money that's, unlimited, it's very, very hard to get on many states. And as an independent, unless you're on every state, it's going to be very, very hard to win because people are used to the two-party system. And I think if you were going to do it, you should go probably one of the two parties because there you're getting on automatically. Hey, there's something for you to figure out. It is very, very hard to get on the ballots.
I'm a step ahead of you already, Donald. The Libertarian Party is almost on every ballot there is. The only thing you need is ballot access and be allowed in the debates.
Okay, well, that's a good answer.
And I would tell the Libertarians, look, I'm accepting your mantle, but be aware, no one's going to control me because that's how I win. The fact that I'm uncontrolled and you'll elect a president who is not part of the two-party gang system, as I call it.
Well, so you're really thinking about it then, Jesse, huh?
Oh, I'm thinking about it.
Wow. You will shake things up. You will definitely shake them up. Well, you've been a friend of mine for a long time, and, it's an honor to do this with you. And it's fun. This is not your typical interview, right?
No, it ain't. It isn't at all. But you know what, Donald? It would be fun, and I think this country needs to be shaken up.
Well, you're right about that. That I can tell you. So this country's in big trouble. Hey, Jesse, thank you very much. A great honor, man. I'll see you soon, I hope.
Thank you, Donald. Absolutely. Let's get together and play golf, man.
100%. 100%.